Hello, and welcome to Film Slam Stream's post-film conversation for We Are Flying. My name is Eric Siler, and I'm an instructor of film, media arts, and communications, as well as moderator for this conversation. We are very pleased to be joined by the director of We Are Flying, Todd Antony. Todd Antony was born in New Zealand, and he has a personal projects that have lasted a few years and have taken him all over the globe, including this one that you're seeing too. He has won numerous awards for his photography and his film work. Hello, Todd, and welcome.
Hey Eric, how are you?
I'm just doing just well. Thank you so much for joining us today. This we are flying. I mean, I just what a touching film. And I know before we started, you told me this is just something you found online. You had no personal connection. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So I guess the last 10 or so years I've been I'm photography based as sort of my primary background, and then the last few years I've been moving more and more into motion directing as a way of fleshing out my stories in more detail and more depth. And those personal projects, I shoot advertising work, but then I also conduct personal projects probably every year and a half. And those have been focusing on little known groups or subcultures around the world for the past 10 or so years. Sort of ordinary people that lead extraordinary lives in their own way. And I was on the hunt for a new project, and sort of trying to find, it's not just about the visuals, but it's also about the story behind it. So I was trying to find, a story that had some depth to it and some real meaning to it that made it worthwhile, and stumbled across them as a group of players online, and got in touch with them from there.
Oh, great. So you read the story. So did you just get on a plane and go over to Sierra Leone, or did you start making contact with people? Just elaborate a little bit more how that process happened.
Yeah, it takes a bit of time. Most projects, take a long time to gestate, in sort of terms of, is it the right project for you, and then also trying to work out how you're going to approach it to provide, do justice to the subject, but also how can you provide your own sort of unique angle to it. So this particular project, I probably spent about a year, sort of going back and forth in my own mind as much as anything else. But then I got hold of sort of the lead player of the group in Sierra Leone, started talking with him about, what I was thinking, showed him some of my previous work, and sort of discussed, my ideas and the way I work as well, and whether or not they'd be interested in participating and, working together with me on it, which they very much were, thankfully. And then so there was probably, in terms of talking with them, it was probably about sort of 6 months of going back and forth, and then trying to find the right window of time and around, in and around my commercial work to get down there, and then headed down with myself and my assistant, and then picked up a local fixer who I was obviously also in contact with prior to that, and it was just effectively the three of us, on the trip.
Wow, that's really impressive, and that's great that they wanted you to uh, showcase what they're doing. What convinced them? What did you have to say to them to say that you want to tell their story? Why did they want their story told?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of that, I think it was quite straightforward for them, and they want to get their story out there, themselves as a group, and also just disabled people in general are sort of a fairly unrepresentative group in, across media, really, and in their own country, especially disabled people, of which there are, a large number because of the civil war there, and the wounds suffered by numerous children down there. They're disabled people there are viewed in quite a, I guess you could say, negative way, or at least dismissive way, certainly. So and the whole part of the whole reason they play football, is to show people, what they're capable of, because within their culture, they're often thought, if you're disabled, you're no longer, sort of use to the greater collective in a way. So football's a sort of a vehicle for them to emotionally and mentally heal from the Civil War and what happened to them, but also to show people that, they are, capable of so much more than they might think. And they're such impressive athletes, when you're working with them and seeing what they're doing and playing on the fields that they're playing on, which are just sort of hard earth and rock, basically. a lot of the time when we were filming, actually, it was Ramadan as well, and the country has a Muslim aspect to it, and so they were fasting. We're talking sort of 100 degrees odd temperature and humidity, and I was slowly dying as I ran around a football field trying to film them, and these guys are doing it with one leg, crutches, and haven't eaten. So it was pretty. They're pretty amazing athletes and people.
Yeah, that they are. The main subject, Sandy, what a remarkable person. His spirit, his determination. Tell me, how did you connect with Sandy? Were you introduced to him, or did you just find him by talking to many people?
So my fixer Cubber, I found a local fixer there who worked with a cameraman that I found, and he suggested I use Cubber as my fixer for the job for the film, and so I got hold of Cubber and I sort of explained what I wanted to do, and there's 5 teams dotted around the country, in each city, and there's been a few sort of news film crews and what have you go out there and film some stuff, but they always fly into Freetown, shoot the Freetown team, and then generally leave. So there's sort of 2 or 3 people within the Freetown team that are very well versed at dealing with the media now and film crews coming in, and so we'd seen them in a way, and so I wanted to make sure we got into some of the more provincial cities around Freetown. So I asked Cubber to head out to Bow, which is about 4 hours out of Freetown, and find sort of 2 or 3 guys there that we could sit down, ask their story about. So it's almost doing a pre-interview, really, trying to figure out what their story is. Are they happy to be on camera as well? Because you want to have someone that's able to articulate what it is their story basically. So and Sandy was one of those, and couldn't have been better. He's such a amazing man, and just a pleasure to be around. We spent a lot of time together. He lives in a small excuse me, a small village, an amputee village down the end of a dirt road, just no electricity, just houses there with amputees and their families, and I got to spend time with him, his family, his kids, who I became very close with because they were really intrigued with what we were doing as well. So I'd sort of help get the very, very young kids here, about 5, let them sort of participate in it as well. So it was a really, really amazing experience, and we're still in touch pretty much every month.
Let's talk a little bit more about the production of the film. I understand you went over more than once. Tell me, how many days of filming did you do, and what was the process like?
Yeah, so 2 trips, as you mentioned. The first trip was about a little over 2 weeks long, and on that trip I was shooting the stills, photographic aspects of the project as well as film. So that was sort of a bit of a juggling act in terms of trying to allocate time and space to do both. Because we were running, it was just literally myself, my assistant, as I mentioned, and Cubber, our fixer, and our driver, and so that was us doing filming, sound, all that sort of stuff. Just the 2 of us, 3 of us, effectively. So yeah, pretty bare bones. So the first trip was stills and motion, and then the second trip we came back to the UK, sat down with my editors, and started to go through everything that we'd shot and filmed, and then starting to just piece together like a bare bones framework of what might be working in terms of ordering shots and how we build the story basically. And then from that we were like, okay, we're missing some connective tissue here, sort of thing, and some other stuff over here that we could use to flesh out the story a bit more, and have visuals that go with what Sandy's saying as well. So that was the second trip. We went back for another couple of weeks, and that was just purely the motion side of things at that point in time, and did some more interviews with Sandy. He was more comfortable with us by that point in time as well, so the interviews sort of flowed a lot easier. There's lots of hurdles to overcome when you're in a place like Sierra Leone, when you're recording sound, as we discovered on the first trip, because even though we're in a small village next to a dirt road, like I said, that's pretty much just going off into the bush, there was constantly motorbikes going down there, and there were chickens in the background, and there were kids running around, and all sorts of stuff. So you'd be trying to film an interview with sound, and all you could get constantly was a motorbike going past. And you've got to have that, you know, clean background noise to be able to put things together in the edit. Otherwise, you're sort of left with a you know, strange sounds interjecting here and there. But so yeah, the process was pretty. It was quite nice in the way that it was very bare bones, because it meant that we could spend more time with the players, you know, just on a one-to-one basis, you know, so it felt more personal, and it was more, you know, you could get more into the nitty-gritty of what, you know, what their stories were without a big, you know, a big crew surrounding you and everything else.
Now, as a documentarian, as you know, the story kind of unfolds and helps write itself. And you went in with one mindset. Tell us about the mindset that you went into this film and what changed. I guess what changed was by talking to the people. So tell us your original thoughts and how it shifted. Take us to that.
Yeah, it's a really hard one because I wanted to approach the subject with a lot of sensitivity. It was one of those things that the more I read about before I went out there, the more I was, you know, knew I had to tell the story, because it's just, you know, what they went through as children is quite, yeah, unfathomable from where we sit. You know, it's and going in there, I don't like to go in with a rigid framework, especially, you know, shooting documentary, because then you're not telling their story, you're trying to tell your story. So I tend to go in with sort of waypoints that I might want to hit, and then in between that, let whatever's, you know, happening in front of you unfold and react to that, basically. You know, I've had other films where I went in and tried to, you know, said, oh, this is how I want it to be, and then one of the participants would, you know, at one point she'd written a poem, and it was like, oh my god, that's the background for the whole story. All of a sudden, it's you know, so you've got to be reactive to what's on the ground in front of you. And some of the players, I sat and I was almost in tears on a few occasions, just, you know, chatting with one guy on the beach. You know, I like to spend time with him before you start filming, so you can just, you know, chat and get a feel for what's going on. And he'd been shot in the leg as a kid. He was running away, and his mother was running away, and he was on her back, and a bullet hit his leg, and so that's how he lost his leg. But the rest of his family were rounded up, locked in a house, and the house was burnt down. You know, this is his extended family. And he sort of said it in a very sort of matter-of-fact way, because he was only about 5 or 6 when it happened to him. So he's now in his sort of late 20s. So there's sort of a strange level of detachment there. But I was then sort of reciting that back into my phone as I walked up the beach before we started doing any filming, just trying not to, you know, burst into tears. Basically, it was just unfathomable from our point of view. So you've got to be reactive to that sort of situation, you know, when you're there, and allow what they're saying to dictate the visuals that then come from it and the structure of the story as well. And the editors too. Editors play a big part in it. I had one sort of initial idea of how we piece the film together, which was probably a bit more linear. And then they came up with using the archival footage for the beginning of the film, which was one of those things. Initially, I was like, I didn't want to get too far into the actual war itself. And obviously that was the cause of their injuries, but it's something that, unless you're extremely knowledgeable about, you don't want to sort of go too far into and then misrepresent that as well. So, but then also, once I was there, it became apparent that you couldn't not approach that, you know, in a fairly straightforward way. And that archival footage was a way to, you know, very much quickly, you know, drop the viewer into the background behind everything, and show them, you know, straight away, you know, what caused all this, basically. So it's yeah, it's little things like that. It's not just one thing. It's happening through the process, and then in the edit as well. You're just adapting and reacting to, yeah, what's unfolding.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the response to the film. Has the team seen the film at all?
They have, yeah, yeah. It was quite nice. The second trip I went back, I was able to take the photographs I took from the first trip, and they were ecstatic with those. They were just I've got a great film of just videoing them on my phone, watching them see the photographs, and their you know, reactions were just priceless. And yeah, and they're really happy with the film as well. Obviously sent it through to Sandy and everything else. So they're very happy. And the trying to get a screening together for them, actually, it's quite hard to organize it in Freetown, but so they can all, rather than just watching it on a phone or a computer, they can actually go and sit down in a proper screen and see it, hopefully. And then in terms of yeah, reactions, sort of wider than that, yeah, I've had really positive feedback from a number of places, some other festivals as well as CIFF obviously, and yeah, people saying that they were pretty emotionally hooked into it by the time they'd walked out at the end. It's sort of a bit of it starts out quite sort of heavy in the first minute or so, and then obviously has a more positive end to it.
Oh, great. So, what's next for you? Are there any plans to maybe do a sequel to this or make it into a feature, or you have other projects that,
It did cross my mind. It's one of those ones that sort of it had to be. I think we're tipping 8 minutes at the moment on the film, and as I was sort of shooting it, it sort of felt like something that had to be sort of 10 minutes or thereabouts, or it had to be 90 minutes. It's sort of because the material and the stories you'd have to start layering in there from other players and what have you. It would have to become a much bigger film. It sort of couldn't. Yeah, it could only sort of go over an hour at that point in time. So I probably won't revisit it. But I've got another project on the go at the moment, which is actually going back to a stills project I did a couple of years ago, or yeah, about 4 or 5 years ago, down in Bolivia, with a group called the Wrestling Cholitas. So I went and shot a stills project on them, and again, their story is just amazing, and so I'm going back just in pre-production at the moment, trying to organize all their sort of pre-interviews and everything else before we head back down to Bolivia and La Paz, hopefully sort of Mayish, hopefully all going well.
wow, that's great. That's great. Travel and photography and film, keeps
Yep.
you,
Yes. I get it if I spend too much time behind a desk.
I see. Finally, before I let you go, are you still in contact with the team and just give us an update on how things are going?
Yeah, yeah. In touch with them, like I said, pretty much on a monthly basis. Sandy and sort of the guys out of Freetown as well. I've been doing a lot of fundraising work for them. So initially, I had a GoFundMe running so that I can get crutches and equipment over to them. And that was great. We managed to get about 100 pairs of crutches, sent down to Sierra Leone for them, because it's that crazy irony that down there crutches are hugely expensive, but they're much cheaper over in Europe. So we managed to do that, and I've been helping Sandy out as well with certain things like trying to get internet into his or electricity through solar panels into his village, as well as hopefully get some power in there as well and things like that. So I've been helping him, fundraising for that to help him get those things and help his. He's been doing a computer course, that sort of stuff as well, with the computer that I was able to get him. And so it's just trying to make sure that it wasn't just a case of going in there, making the film and then leaving again. I wanted to make sure there was some tangible benefit left behind for the players, especially Sandy, obviously, because I was in such close contact with him.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And with uh, well, with the film, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. But anyway, I just want to read a quote that Sandy says. He says, because when you are living alone, you feel pain, but when you're with others, you're like yourself. And that's true not only for people with disabilities and not disabilities. People want to be with like people, and you feel more like yourself. And by bringing this film to our attention, you know, everyone can feel like themselves when you find likeness and amongst others. So, and this is great, especially in the disability world. And I applaud you
Yeah.
for this and congratulate you on all your success.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and it's big thank you to me to the Flying Stars as well for letting me be part of their story.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, the question I had was, is there an age limit with the Flying Stars? Can Sandy keep playing as long as he's
I
able
think
to?
it's just as long as he's able, basically. So yeah, and he's a pretty resilient man. So I reckon it might be quite a while. So I was
You,
actually I helped him get a passport the other. He didn't have a passport, so I helped pay for him to get a passport a few months ago. So there was I think it was a Belgian amputee league that started up, that they was hopefully there were some people over there scouting for players to potentially go over there and play over there. So football could yet prove to provide even more for him, which would be amazing.
absolutely, that could be. Well, all the best to you, and we hope to see you again. Thank you again for everything.
Absolute pleasure, Eric. Thanks so much.
And thank you to our audience for joining us for this important and invigorating conversation. For more information about our upcoming events, please visit us at clevelandfilm.org. I'm Eric Siler. Thank you.